Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome folks to The Hungry Gamers, back with another mini review, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm actually going to be doing a mini review of 3 games at once, and they are the 3 Robotech games from Solar Flare Games, and they're not games that you can play together, but due to the same publisher and the same theme, I didn't want to break this out over 3 different videos, and instead I'm just going to put it into a single one. And so you'll just have to make sure you check down in the description for the timestamps if there's a particular one that you are hoping to get my opinion on. But the first one is Robotech Force of Arms, which is the smallest of the 3, both in, well, size and complexity and length of game. And this is a head-to-head style game in which each player is going to take control of one side of the battle in Robotech, and the game is played out across a grid of 9 cards, with each player having 4 different ships, and there's 1 empty space in the middle. And what's going to happen is each player is going to take control of 2 sides of the rectangle, and I'll explain that in just a minute. It'll make a little bit of sense, I hope. And what's going to happen is, one, you'll be able to do a limited amount of moving ships around. When you move one ship, you just swap it with another one, and it kind of changes which ships are in which columns and rows. And then each player is going to be able to activate their cards on one column, on one side with columns, on one side which is rows. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to be playing cards around the sides, and those cards will affect every ship in the column. So you might add attack, which means every enemy ship in the column will be affected by that attack. So maybe I have a value 5 attack going on. That means every enemy ship will be hit for 5 damage. Then of course I'll be playing cards across in the rows and doing the same thing. Of course I can also be adding defense for my own personal ships. And then of course there are special abilities as you're playing the cards out. Some of them will give you attack tokens or defense tokens, or let you move a ship, or do various different things to kind of muck with what's going on. And then what's going to happen is, after you put out your tokens, and everyone's played all of their cards, reverse that, you play your cards first, then you put out tokens, but you get the idea. You're going to simply look at all the ships, and you're going to add up how much damage is a ship taking, how much defense does it have. If I am playing red, I may look and say, okay, well, your green ship, I've done 12 damage, and you have 13 defense, so you take that ship, you're going to hold on to it. It's your points for the game. However, if I do more damage, then I'll take it, and the points are going to be awarded to me. And you're going to play back and forth, and at the end of the game, so you're going to play through, and then whoever gets the most points from destroying or saving the most ships will be the winner. Nice and simple. So what do I like about this game? The main thing that I like about this game is I've never actually played a game where the strategic combat is done with this kind of multiplication table style, where you kind of have this your columns and your rows, and you're each kind of putting things on different sides there. I'm trying to move both of these up, and there we go, like that. And then they're kind of meeting, and so depending on how you've played your cards, you might have one whole column that just has enemy ships there, and you're going to just be blasting those really hard. But then of course, if it gets moved, you're going to be in trouble. But to me, that is a very interesting style of doing the combat, or just kind of playing and just blasting these rows with defense or attack. And I do think that is clever. That is something that I have not played before. I don't know if it's unique to this game, but I haven't played before, so I do think that's very clever. And then along with that is, well, it's a very quick and relatively simple to play game. And I also think if you're someone that really loves Robotech, then you're going to enjoy the, I'm going to call them Easter eggs, as you see different characters and things that you will recognize from the cartoon. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is the card quality is not good. It's not the worst that I've ever come across, but it is not a good card quality. They're very, very flimsy. In fact, my copy showed up, and some of the cards out of the shrink wrap were a little bit bent, like they were wet or something. And they weren't. They were still in the shrink wrap. They are just so thin that it's just not great quality. There's something that if you enjoy this game, you're going to want to probably get sleeves for it to kind of give them a little more substance, especially as you're putting some down and picking them up a lot. The ships doesn't really matter because they just kind of stay there, they stay down. And then my other quibble with the game is there's not a ton to it. As I explained to you, it's a pretty quick, just kind of putting down, and I don't know that it necessarily gets the most that it could out of the kind of multiplication table, as I said, those kind of columns and rows that you're affecting the whole thing. I don't think it gets the most that it could out of it. I feel like it's on the peripheral. Oh, this is kind of a neat little thing, and then boom, we're done. I think this is a game that might have benefited a little with just a little bit more depth to it. But that said, I do think if you are looking for something that's head-to-head, you like Robotech, and you're looking for something that's just a little bit different, then this game is actually a pretty cool option. So, there you have it, folks. That is Robotech Force of Arms. Let's move on to the next one as we kind of move up our size and complexity. Now, the second in the series is Robotech Crisis Point. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to play because I kind of already explained it, because this is pretty much the same game as Force of Arms, just one step more complex. Now, the main difference to me is rather than just kind of having the ships out there, there's different locations that are down on the board. And yes, the different ships in the Force of Arms were well, different, but there are more things that happened if you control the different areas on the board with the different locations and buildings and stuff that you can put out. And in addition to that, there are a few more things that you can do, like the United Earth Force. They're able to have a cluster bomb thing where you hurt yourself a little, but then you hurt everything else around it. And there's an ability to kind of swap tokens around the board a little bit. So it's everything that the other game does. It just has a couple more layers to the mechanics of the game, but pretty much it is the same game. And so what do I like about this game? I do like that there is a little bit more meat to it. And I do think that is, for the most part, to the game's benefit. It does make the game a bit bigger. It comes with a board that you can put out there and so on. And everything that I said that I liked about Force of Arms remains true here. And I also like just the small changes that it's made. There are a lot more tokens that you're dealing with in this particular game, but they've simplified them in many ways, because in the previous game you had attack tokens and defense tokens. This game you just have a token. You put it out. If it's on your unit, that is a defense token. If it's on their unit, you're attacking. And to me, I think that is a really, really good, strong change. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is it's got this big old board. I don't know why you need it. I mean, I get it. It's so you know where stuff goes. You're not going to mess up your grid, but it's just not that big of a grid to begin with, but you're placing cards down kind of back and forth. So I do kind of get that, but it just makes it take up more space than it needs to, because other than the board, which is folded up about this size, it's just some cards and tokens in there. And so to me, that's a little bit of a disappointment. And then the next thing is, even though the card quality is better, it is a better card quality than in the first one, it's not good yet. Like I said, it's a little bit thicker, they're a little bit less flimsy, but again, if you're going to be playing this game, you're gonna want to sleeve these cards. And it's just the quality just isn't quite there, though it has gotten better from the first game on the list. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a longer game. Whereas Force of Arms, to me, is just a lightning fast game for the most part. This one, because it's a little bit more complicated, it takes a bit longer. And so the question becomes, is the extra length worth it to you for the little bits and changes that you have here and there? And that's something you have to decide, because my other quibble is, even though this one does do a little bit more with that kind of multiplication table thing that I was talking about in just the previous one, it doesn't do a lot more with it. It's still the same core mechanic. And yes, you can do the math quicker because you don't have the attack and defense tokens. Just you put your team token out there and that's great. But it still, to me, doesn't make that the core of the game. And so just something for you to keep in mind. That said, this is another one that if you enjoy Robotech, you're going to really love all the Easter eggs and things you're going to find in there. And, oh, this makes sense because, and this doesn't make sense. Well, I assume it all makes sense. I'm not a Robotech guy, really. But all of that's kind of going to come together and will lift this game a little bit for you. So there you have it, folks. That is an even quicker, Robotech Crisis Point. Again, I think if you liked the sound of the first one, where you're like, this doesn't have enough meat on its bones, then maybe this one is the one for you. So let's move on and talk about the last one on the list, which is the biggest and the most complicated. Also, note the only one that is cooperative, and that is Robotech Invid Invasion. All right, and now for the last one, Invid Invasion. And this one is the most unique of the three, also the most complicated. Additionally, it is fully co-op or soloable. And what is happening in this one is you are playing in two different phases. The first one is you are basically battling your way across the board and trying to make a clear path from one side to the other. And as you do that, you're flipping over cards, and each card's going to be something you can fight. Might be an ally that you're going to add. It's going to be a bonus to you. You might be able to find gear that you can use, or whatever it may be. And as you're doing that, all of the tests that you're going to take are going to be done via dice, or at least most of them will be done via dice. So if you're going to fight the thing, you got to roll some dice. You want to run away, you got to roll some dice. You want to search for something, you got to roll some dice. And as you make your way across, you'll be kind of bulking yourself up with gear, and you'll be able to upgrade your mechas to new things if you want to spend the various protoculture to do that, and so on and so on. While you're doing that, you're kind of managing your protoculture signature. It goes up and down depending on what it is that you're using. Then when you get all the way across the board, then you enter the boss fight phase. And then you're going to try, there'll be more things will come out, and the big boss will come out, and you're going to do your best to kill it before it kills you. Now, I should also say you have 6 rounds to get across the board. I should have said that prior. And really, that's kind of the core of it. I'm not going to dive too deep into the details because this is a mini review, not a full-on one. But basically, you're going to be doing a lot of dice chucking. You're going to be managing the protoculture signature that you have in your protoculture, and you're going to be managing your gear and deciding how to upgrade yourself. And hopefully, you'll be able to take out the boss at the end. And really, that's the broad overview of how it works. So what do I like about it? What I like about it is I do enjoy the two phases. I do like this idea that you're kind of going to battle your way across, and it's abstract, it's just cards on the board, but you're kind of battling your way across, and you can go different directions. You just want to try to get more stuff to try to boost yourself up more, but of course you're getting more and more risk as you do this, so we've got a little bit of push your luck in there. And so I do think that is a satisfying aspect of the game. I also think that the final boss fight is relatively straightforward and goes relatively quickly. So it's not like you are playing this huge long thing just to have another huge long thing. The climax does feel climactic rather than, a long drawn out slog. So I do think that works well as far as the structure of the game. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is it's a lot of dice chucking. I mean, pretty much everything you're doing dice chucking. And I like dice chucking. I like chaos, but there's not a ton of mitigation going on in the game. So you can find yourself, if you just roll poorly, just screwed. And again, I didn't find it happen to me that often, but it certainly can. As I said, there's not a ton of mitigation in there. And the next thing is, the rulebook's not great. It's not the worst rulebook I've ever come across in my life, not even close to that, but I wish there was more diagrams and images, and there were just some times that I just wasn't sure what it was that I was supposed to do, and I was able to figure it out, or at least I think figure it out, but it's just not a great rulebook. I think it would be well served with a bunch more images in there, a bunch of pictures and diagrams. There's a few pictures, but mostly it is just text, line by line, this is what you're supposed to do, and it's relatively easy to be confused by that. And the last thing I'll say about it is, the card quality is better. Each of the 3 games I went through, the quality got better and better. This one, they kind of have a linen finish type thing on there, but they're still a little bit flimsy. So do these need to be sleeved? Maybe not. Maybe not. Whereas the other 2, I think if you're going to play, you're going to have to sleeve them if you're going to play a lot. This one, maybe you don't want to, but you probably are going to want to sleeve them anyway. And that's just something, just again, to be aware of. All the standees are fine. No problem with any of those things there. I believe there's a possibility to get some minis, or maybe in the Kickstarter there was minis. I'm not totally sure. I know nothing about that really, but I suspect there are probably some minis out there. Just cut that, no one cares. But really, that's it. I think out of the 3 games, Invid Invasion is the most interesting to me as someone who likes solo co-op games. I think the 2 different phases are particularly interesting, and so if that sounds attractive, you probably want to check this one out. Whereas the other 2, I think if you're looking for that kind of head-to-head battle, I think it does something interesting with the way you are playing on the rows and columns. I think that's an interesting thing. I think you kind of have a choice there. Do you want the one that's just super, super fast or that's a little bit meatier? I do think the first two games perhaps aren't quite where they could be. The utilization of that interesting mechanic of the rows and columns, I think it could just have had a little bit more to it to really make it something particularly interesting, as opposed to, oh, that's kind of cool, I haven't seen that. But I do think overall, if you're someone that likes Robotech, you are going to enjoy the Easter eggs that you're going to get in these three games. I think it's kind of up to you to decide which one of the three you're more interested in. I think if you're someone that's not big into Robotech, then it's not necessarily a game that you're going to jump in and want to grab. I think the Robotech part of it is what makes this game interesting. The mechanics work pretty well. You have to decide, are the things that I pointed out as quibbles, things that, you don't like that, that's something that's going to bother me if you're not interested in Robotech. But I do think it does, at least from my limited knowledge of Robotech, does give you a little bit of a vibe of Robotech, particularly the Invid invasion. So there you have it, folks. That is all three Robotech games. Quick overview of all of them and my thoughts. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.